Hello, American history students. Today we're going to be doing a brief overview of what the world looked like in 1492, the year that Europeans realized there was a whole other continent on this planet, two continents actually, the Americas. What was going on when this happened? Here are your video goals. By the end of this video, you should be able to talk about which region of the world was the richest in 1492. You should be able to talk about what Europe was like in 1492. You should be able to talk about why European kings wanted to send explorers out to find a way to India. And you should be able to explain why the Aztec and the Inca were less technologically advanced than Europe and Asia. So probably the biggest thing you need to know about the world in 1492 is that it was really fragmented. It wasn't all interconnected the way it is today. Rather, the world was broken up into a bunch of different regions that really didn't interact very much with each other. The three main regions we're going to focus on today, and this is a bit of an oversimplification, but we're just going to focus on these three regions because they're the most important for our story. And these three regions are East Africa and Asia. They kind of center around the Indian Ocean and all fit together in one big trading zone. The second big area is Europe, and the third big area is the Americas. So back in 1492, there was only very, very little contact between Europe and Asia. And there was no contact at all between Europe and Asia and the Americas. And this changes, of course, in 1492 with Columbus's voyage. Let's talk first about what East Africa and Asia was like in 1492. So this area was the richest area in the world in 1492. The civilizations that grew up around the Indian Ocean, like India and China and the Spice Islands, that is like Indonesia down there in the bottom right corner of the map, these places were incredibly wealthy and advanced. And part of the reason for why they were so advanced was because they were all trading with each other all the time. They would sail across the Indian Ocean and trade valuable goods with one another. These were goods like silk, which is a very fine fabric that people like to wear. Other types of cloth, especially cotton cloth from India. Special pottery made in China, fine china. And most importantly, spices. You can see spices pictured down there. You probably remember these from the lesson we did last year. But spices were incredibly valuable. They were able to make food tasty. You could also use spices to preserve your food. And it was really easy to ship a lot of them and make a lot of money in this way. So this trade that's going on in the Indian Ocean around India and China there's a lot of money moving back and forth. And these guys, India and China and the Spice Islands, really have no interest in trading with Europe. They don't even really know who Europe is. They're just some nobodies who live off to the north. So these guys are doing their thing, super wealthy, and they're kind of a little self-contained universe here out in Asia. So what's Europe look like in 1492? Europe is interesting because it's really quite poor compared to Asia and the Spice Islands in East Africa at this point. But it's becoming very powerful. One of the main reasons that Europe is becoming really powerful at this point is it's developed really advanced military technology. They've developed advanced cannons and also other types of firearms like muskets. They've developed really advanced forms of armor, as you can see down there in the middle bottom picture. And they've also developed ships, light and maneuverable ships that can sail across oceans and that can carry cannons on them. And so these three technologies, along with other stuff, makes Europe the most militarily advanced part of the world in 1492. So even though they're poor, they're really strong and can fight the other areas and probably win. So what's going on in Europe around this time is that there are a couple important kingdoms that are starting to develop and grow very quickly. And these kings really need money to govern their growing kingdoms. The four most important kingdoms we're going to be looking at are Portugal, you can see it there at the very tip of Europe, Spain, France, and England, also known as Great Britain. So these kings are trying to get their hands on money in whatever way they can. And they figured out that a really good way to get money is to break into the Eastern spice trade. They want to get over to India and China and get in on that trade and make money off of it. So what they do is they decide to send out explorers to find a quick way to India. Before this, there was really no quick way to get to India. Instead, what they had to do is they had to trade with people from the Middle East and Africa that would go over to India and get stuff and bring it back. And this was not a good system. It made things really expensive. So the kings figured if they could get straight to India, they could sell all this stuff cheap, make a lot of money, and pay for the continuing expansion of their kingdom. And last of all, let's talk about the Americas. So the Americas were populated, as we learned in our last video, primarily by hunter-gatherers, but there were also two powerful civilizations that were growing up in the Americas. The Aztec in central Mexico, up there in the north, and the Inca along the west coast of South America, down there in the south. And so these guys were emerging as empires, but one thing that's really important to know about North America is that it's really isolated from, or the Americas in general, is that it's really isolated from everything else that's going on. They don't have any contact or knowledge about the other civilizations in the world. They don't know that there are any other people across the oceans. And this means that the people in the Americas have to come up with everything on their own. Everything they come up with, they invented themselves. They discovered farming, they discovered how to build buildings, they discovered how to write, they discovered how to do mathematics, all on their own. But what this meant is that they ended up way behind the other civilizations because they couldn't copy and borrow the ideas that these guys had come up with. And this left the peoples of the Americas relatively weak compared to the other civilizations. The main reason that they were really weak is that they didn't have very advanced technology. So if you look at their military technology compared to Europe's military technology, they are way behind. They don't have any guns, and they don't have any metal. They really don't know how to make weapons out of metal yet. You can see those pictures down there. Those are the weapons that the Aztecs used, and they're made out of wood and stone. In terms of development, they're about 2,000 years behind Europe and Asia at this point. And this makes them really easy to conquer. And what this means is that when the Europeans accidentally bump into them, it's going to be really easy for the Europeans to take over and to make the Americas theirs. Let's look ahead for a moment now. 1492, Columbus bumps into the Americas, and the Europeans have also sailed to the Indian Ocean and broken their way into the spice trade there. So what's going on? Well, so as Europe is expanding outward, Europe is also going to become incredibly rich. They're going to basically take all of the trade and divert it to Europe from Asia. They're also going to start conquering and settling North and South America. And they're going to take this whole continent, get rid of the people, that is, kill or force away the people who live there, and turn it into a European-style country. The United States, which is the main focus of this course, arises out of this process. The United States comes into being because of a European country coming over to America, taking control of it, and trying to use that territory to become wealthy. And so this is some broad, big picture stuff that's going to help us to understand where the United States comes from. It comes out of this larger process of Europe expanding and taking over large parts of the world. Here are your video goals. Thanks for watching. I do want you to really pay attention to where the Americas are, where Europe is, and where Asia is, and how the three will be connected. Think about how you would get from one to the other if you had to sail there. All right, that's all I've got for you. Make sure you answer these questions on your note sheet. I will see you guys tomorrow.